Everest Live. I'm Ben Ayers here with the first in our series of Remembering Broad Peak. We're going to be speaking with a number of friends, personalities, people in our climbing community to remember the 10 climbers that were lost in the recent avalanche on Broad Peak. I'm here with my friend, Nelly Attar, who is one of the most inspiring people working in the mountains today. Nelly is an entrepreneur. She's a Saudi-Lebanese climber who has climbed Everest, Lhotse, K2, Kanchenjunga, Amada Blam, and so much more. She also is a real advocate for women in the outdoors and a real groundbreaker in the space. Thank you so much, Nelly, to talk with us about your friend and climbing partner, Nadira.
Thank you, Ben, for having me. I wish under different circumstances.
This being the first one, too, it's a hard thing. It's hard to know how to do this, how to properly remember people. But today we're going to be talking about the Omani climber, Nadira, who was, the little I know of her, she was also, like you, a real pioneer in climbing for women. And, you know, I know that you were with her when she became the first Omani woman to summit Mount Everest, and that wasn't the end of her climbing career. But if you could just tell me a little bit about your relationship to her and, you know, what you know about what she accomplished and what her goals were, you know, if you could just tell me about how you met her and some of the mountains you climbed together.
So where do I begin? I met Nadira on Everest. I met her as soon as I got to Kathmandu, and we were preparing our gear, getting to meet the team, and I met her there and then, and we got to climb Everest together. So we started off as strangers, and after Everest I felt like I really it just felt like a friendship that will last a lifetime. And we were 4 Arab women climbing Everest together, but this was, again, like a coincidence. It wasn't planned. Nadira was one of them. There was Joyce from Lebanon, Mona from Saudi, and I amongst the other team members. And I think Everest was the start of Nadira's climbing journey. I think Everest was like the start for her. I think she always believed that she could do something like this. She tried with other mountains like Amada Blam and Kilimanjaro and didn't get to summit these mountains. But then on Everest, she was like, oh, wow, I could really do this. And then that was the start of a very, very impressive career for Nadira, an impressive climbing career. She made history on these climbs over and over again as the first Omani, first Arab. And then after Everest, we got to do K2 together. We were on separate teams, but it almost felt like we're on the same team. We would spend so much time together at base camp. We would spend almost like all our, rest periods together. And then we got to climb together in the Swiss Alps. I would visit her in Oman. She would visit me. I was there for her when she ran one of the trail races in Oman.
And, in addition to Everest and K2, she also climbed Blam, Nanga Parbat, and Manaslu. She was on her way to climb all 14 peaks. Nelly, can you tell me a bit about, I think for our viewers, for people who aren't from the Arab world, who live in the West, I think they may, could you give us some context on what it really means to be the first Omani, the first Arab woman on Everest and K2. I know you've broken similar barriers in your life. What did her example, what did her accomplishments mean for other women and for her society? How important was it that she was able to accomplish those records and break those barriers?
I think we see it now. I think we see the impact that she's had. She's impacted so many lives, and it goes way beyond the mountaineering community. It goes way beyond the Arab region. I think by someone like her doing this, which is so unconventional for a traditional Omani. She is quite a traditional Omani and comes from a very, very traditional family. For someone to not just be in the outdoor space and climb, she's making history on these mountains and climbing the world's most dangerous and largest mountains. I think it gives permission for other women to do something similar. It gives permission for other women to craft their own stories, craft their own lives. And this is what I loved so much about Nadira, is that she really honored her traditions and culture. She was very, very proud of where she came from. Yet at the same time, she crafted her own life. She did things on her own terms. And this is what I loved about Nadira. She had both sides.
Yeah. Interesting. And I can imagine that that's quite rare. Can you tell me a bit just about her, like her background? Did she come from a family of climbers? Did she come from I mean, from what I understand, she was a civil servant. She had a fairly humble background.
A very humble background. I hope I don't get this wrong, but I believe she has over 10 siblings. So quite a traditional family. And I know that she studied geography. She worked as a teacher for a while and then worked as a civil servant for Oman's Ministry of Education. And this is where she took a woman to Kilimanjaro. I think this was her first mountain. One of the things I love about Nadira is she always tried to pave the way for people along the way as she's doing these things.
Okay.
So from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then she worked as a general director deputy at Oman Scouts and Guides organization. And I think this is the last job that she had, or the last role.
So I guess just if you could help me understand, I think it's obvious from the outside to say that having a woman assume those roles, right? To having a woman leading trips and treks, having a woman wanting to climb the world's most dangerous mountain. Like, how unique is that in Omani society? How unique is that in the world that she came from? Like, could you just help us give some context to how I mean, are there a lot of other women doing this?
Hardly. I don't think I know of any Omani that's doing. I mean, it's rare for Arabs to be doing this, let alone Omani. And I think she's the only Omani period that's doing these mountains at the scale. I mean, the person that first inspired her was Khalid, may he rest in peace. And he was the one who inspired her to do Everest. He was the first Omani to do Everest. And then as she was attempting Everest, he passed away. And then Nadira carried on that legacy to doing some of the other 8,000 meter peaks. And I think she was the only Omani doing climbing mountains of the scale. And I know that Nadira is unique. As her friend, I know she's unique on so many levels. But I didn't comprehend really, truly how different she is until I was at the memorial a couple of days ago. And I got to meet her family, her wonderful family. I got to see her community. And Nadira is truly so different. It's just, I think, a very different world, the whole outdoor community. And then to be traveling to Nepal, Pakistan, and doing these things and make this part of your life. And just Nadira's lifestyle was very unique. It was all about training, getting people outdoors. Everything she did was for that. And I know at some point she joined the army to do some training with them. And I think she might have been the only woman to ever do so. So I think she was breaking barriers and, challenging norms in a number of ways. And yeah, I think through doing this, she paved the way for so many other women in her community to do so.
And so all the time that you spent with her in base camp and climbing, it's a really special thing. The friendships that you build on the mountains are really different than friendships you find elsewhere in your life. I know you know that. And could you tell me a few things that you learned from her that you applied to your life?
Boys, there's so many things that I learned from Nadira. First of all, focus on your own lane. Focus on your own lane. Do your own thing. And don't let other people bother you. Don't let other opinions influence your decisions. Do what feels right for you and stay in your own lane. And one of the things that I really loved about Nadira is she really didn't let any drama or anything negative affect her energy. She was really, really, she had an amazing way of guarding and protecting her energy. And so a lot of the times I'd go crying to her about random things. She'd be like, don't cry, don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. Even when she was in the midst of suffering, she just had this composure and she would keep things in perspective. It will pass. So this is one thing that I think will stick with me and that Nadira had taught me. Determination. Nothing stopped her. Nothing. She was unstoppable. If this was her goal, she will make it happen, no matter what. She wanted to do the 14 peaks, and whether she was sick, whether she had personal challenges, whether there was, challenges in terms of finding sponsorship, she found a way to make it happen. She crafted her life in a way to make these things happen. And I don't think she had an athletic background. She didn't grow up with sports. She learned all this in her 30s and her 40s. Like, she was doing this in her 40s. I didn't even know how old Nadira was. I mean, she wasn't old, but I didn't know of her age.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she never made it a point that she took on sports later in her life. And she always had this eternal youthful energy and positivity. And, there's always ways for us to grow and learn. And that's the energy that she came with. So determination. If you want something to happen, you will make it happen. And this is, this is what Nadira embodied, I think, in the things that she did. Also, I found it so wonderful how she really honored her values, culture, traditions, and carried that into the mountains.
Do you think her faith motivated her? Like, I can see a way in which people who, have a strong faith tradition can either be motivated by that or, like, in the climbing world, which sometimes can be sort of agnostic and sort of hedonistic. I think would be a temptation to step away from that. But I'm hearing you say that her faith actually was part of her power and her strength.
100%. Of course, Nadira had so much faith in the process. She had so much faith in things working out. She had so much faith in everything being okay. And then if things don't work out, she also had faith that it's for the best. And that's what kept her going. So I think faith was a superpower for Nadira, for sure. And it drove her up these mountains. It made her relentless. It made her fearless. And it also gave her this grace to accept things. If they don't work out, if they work out, she just does her part and then she surrenders to the process, which we call tawakkul in Arabic. She surrenders to the process. And I think this is how Nadira climbed. Climbing with her, experiencing the ups and downs with her. This was her attitude. You just focus on what you can control and you let go. You let go.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. When we were talking kind of before we started recording, you talked about this idea that it is written. And could you tell me a bit about that as well and sort of how that's helping you make sense of what happened?
In Islam, we believe that every person dies when they're meant to die. It's written the way you're meant to pass away and when you're meant to pass away. And so that gives you acceptance.
Yeah. Yeah. That's beautiful. Nelly, thank you so much for sharing and being so open with us. Is there anything else you'd like to share about Nadira that you'd like our audience to remember or to know about her that we haven't covered?
Nadira did so much to impact her community. Even as her close friend, there's so many things I didn't know she was doing. So when I've been reading about her stories and I've been reading, different things that have been coming up about her over the last few days, I feel so proud of her, so proud of the person she is, so proud to know her. And I hope that we can all, take a few things from Nadira's story and hopefully that inspires us.
Thank you so much, Nelly. I'm really moved by this, and I feel so fortunate just to have learned what I have about Nadira. I'm so sorry for your loss, and our love goes out to Nadira El Harthy and her family, and to the rest of our climbing community. And Nelly, thank you so much for helping us remember such an extraordinary person.
Thank you,
Really
Ben, so much. Thank you for your time. And thank you for everything that you've been sharing.
Well, we're all in it together, Nelly, and I look forward to seeing you back in Kathmandu
Inshallah.
fairly soon.
Inshallah.